Good afternoon, everyone. Before we start with today's opening and launching program of the Santo Niño Bendísyuni project, please allow us to remind everyone about the following webinar etiquette. In this webinar, participants are muted by default. We urge you to use chat for greetings, comments, and questions, and that during the forum, the chat box will be reopened so that attendees can type in their questions. And we would like to request you to treat this virtual conference as if you're attending a live face-to-face event. And we would like to request everyone to listen attentively and engage with meaningful conversations with the speakers and or your co-participants. And of course, we would like to request everyone to answer the evaluation form after the event. The link to the form will be posted in the chat box. Only those who answered the evaluation form will receive their certificates. Now that we are done with the webinar etiquette, we would like to once again say good afternoon to everyone and maupay kulop hay yung tanan. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Welcome to this online project entitled Santo Niño Bendísyuni, Images and Narratives of the Holy Child in Eastern Visayas. Today's event is brought to you under the auspices of the UP Tacloban Leyte Samar Heritage Center and Bátì UP Tacloban in collaboration with the Pintados Foundation Incorporated. Santo Niño Bendísyuni is our humble contribution to the Quincentennial celebration of the introduction of the Christian faith to the country, as well as our contribution to the 2021 Santo Niño Fiesta celebration of the city of Tacloban. Today's online event will consist of a webinar related to our devotion and faith to the Santo Niño, as well as the launching or opening program of the online Santo Niño exhibit, which will start today, June 28, 2021, and end on July 28, 2021. Now, entitled Meditations on the History and Image of El Capitan, the Santo Niño de Tacloban, this afternoon's webinar will consist of two important scholarly presentations. These pre-recorded video presentations are, first, a historical outline of the origin of and devotion to the Santo Niño de Leyte by Monsignor Hilbert Urbina, Chair of the Worship Commission of the Archdiocese of Palo. The next presentation is entitled Notions of Bendísyuni in the Image of El Capitan, the Santo Niño de Tacloban by Professor Mars Edwinson Briones of the Division of Humanities of UP Visayas Tacloban College. In order to deepen our understanding of our devotion to the Santo Niño, an open forum will be conducted after the pre-recorded presentations. The open forum will be followed by the opening and launching of the Santo Niño Bendísyuni online exhibit. And now, please allow me to introduce to you our first speaker for this afternoon's webinar. Our first resource person currently serves as the chair of the Worship Commission and Vicar General of the Archdiocese of Palo. He was ordained to the priesthood in 1984 and earned his licentiate in sacred liturgy for the Pontifical Institute of Liturgy Anselmianum, Rome. He later earned his doctorate in sacred theology from the Pontifical Lateran University in Rome. His assignments include serving as professor in liturgy at the St. John the Evangelist School of Theology. He also served as parish priest of the Assumption of Our Lady in Tanawan, Leyte, Our Lady of Lourdes in VNG Subdivision, Tacloban City, the Saints Peter and Paul, Ormoc City, and the Our Lady of the Miraculous Medal, Marasbaras, Tacloban City. Today, he serves as parish priest of the Palo Cathedral, Palo, Leyte. Friends, it is our distinct honor to present to you Monsignor Hilbert Urbina. Good afternoon, and thank you, Monsignor Gilbert, for being part of today's webinar and launching program of this collaborative project entitled Santo Niño Bendísyuni. Your role as a resource person in this project is indeed vital in deepening our understanding of our devotion to the Santo Niño. Monsignor, may we request you to please greet our webinar attendees out there?
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon, Stephen. And I would like to greet you all, the participants of this webinar series, and I hope this will be an engaging as well as an enlightening opportunity for us to know more and to learn more about our devotion and hopefully increase our faith in the Santo Niño and in God himself, actually. So I hope you will stay throughout the whole event and be schooled in this, as we also want to know and learn from the insights you will share with us later. Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much, Monsignor Urbina. And at this point, we are now ready to listen and view the presentation of Monsignor Gilbert entitled A Historical Outline of the Origin of and Devotion to the Santo Niño de Leyte.
This topic is about a historical outline of the origin and devotion to the Santo Niño de Leyte. When we talk about the Santo Niño de Leyte, we are talking about the Santo Niño de Tacloban, because the title Santo Niño de Leyte has officially been attached, so to say, to the Santo Niño de Tacloban. Specifically, the image we now refer to as El Capitan. Now, how did it start, the devotion, so to say? Actually, the historical records points to the arrival of the Augustinians in 1770, when they established in Cancabato a visita of Palo. And the title of the visita, or the chapel with a titular saint or titular patron, and the title of the chapel or the patron of the chapel was Dulcissimo Nombre de Jesus. And the image that has been attached to this title is no other than the Santo Niño. So the title itself, the Dulcissimo Nombre de Jesus, is very much akin to the title of Cebu, or the Santo Niño Devotion of Cebu. The Augustinian province of Cebu is called the province of the Holy Name of Jesus. And in fact, Cebu was also called, or before, as the city of the Holy Name of Jesus. No? So the titular itself, the Dulcissimo Nombre de Jesus, or the sweetest name of Jesus, points to the Augustinian origins of the Christian foundation, or the Christian community of Tacloban, with the Santo Niño as its patron or titular. Every year, honor was given to the revered image of the Santo Niño. Every feast of the Holy Name of Jesus on the second Sunday after the feast of the Epiphany, similar to Cebu or elsewhere. Now we have to understand that the feast was the Holy Name, but the image was the Santo Niño, and it happened before. Nowadays, we have a different feast of the Holy Name of Jesus from that feast specifically of the Santo Niño, which is actually officially only proper to the Philippines. So why was there a change in the date from the third Sunday of January to the feast which we now celebrate June 30th? Now it so happened that after the fiesta of 1889, Arcadio Cialcita, the Hermano Mayor for the year 1889, together with the confraternity, decided to send the image to Manila for a much-needed facelift or repainting, we call incarna, and to be fitted with new vestments in preparation for the Paris Fiesta of January 1889. Something, let's say, something happened because after everything was done in Manila, the image was sent back to Tacloban. But on its way to Tacloban, the ship carrying the image, SS Luzon, caught fire. Because of panic, several crates or boxes were thrown into the sea. Among them was one containing the image of the Santo Niño. So left for lost, the confraternity immediately had another image made in time for the fiesta of January 1889. And that image, this alternate image, the new image made for the fiesta of 1889, is what we refer to now as the El Teniente. However, in May 1889, the military governor of Leyte, Jose Gil de Avalle, received communications from the governor of Mindoro of a box marked for Tacloban, which was found off the coast of the island of Semirara. Immediately, retrieval operations were planned. A 9-man team headed by Agustin Banyes was dispatched chartering boat Consuelo, owned by a prominent businessman from Palo, Emilio Ubiao. And they sailed to Semirara to retrieve the image. After a difficulty, however, because they found out that the natives in Semirara were already worshipping, in a sense, the image of the Santo Niño. They were still able to get back the image. And upon getting back the image, the team immediately sailed back to Tacloban. Meanwhile, in Tacloban, during those months, a cholera was afflicting many residents. So, on the afternoon of June 30, 1889, the boat carrying the image of the Santo Niño finally docked at the port of Tacloban. And many of its residents actually came to meet the image. Many, as soon as the image arrived, great jubilation swept the people, and an immense crowd accompanied the procession of the image from the port to the church. So the return of the image was seen as a miraculous event because the arrival of the Santo Niño resulted in many cures at the end of the cholera epidemic. Since then, the people of Tacloban began to celebrate annually the June 30 event. So that is the return of the original image and the miracles which resulted from it. So people now remember the June 30 as something special to them, and actually it eclipsed the January, the third Sunday January feast. So that's why in Tacloban, June 30 was considered hence as the day of the fiesta celebration. So the parish church of Tacloban has since then became the center of the Santo Niño devotion in the region because of the miracles that has been associated with it. Aside from that, the end to the cholera, there have been other miracles reported by the residents and the devotees as to the power of this image of the child Jesus, which we refer to now as the El Capitan. Now, recognizing the importance of this image in the life of the people and the great devotion that many of the faithful had for Santo Niño, the Most Reverend Chotemo Pasis, the Bishop of Palo then, issued a decree dated June 1, 1967, proclaiming the Santo Niño as the heavenly patron of Leyte. On this very same day, June 1st, 1967, the image of the Santo Niño El Capitan was enthroned in the hall of the Capitol building of the province of Leyte. There, the decree was read before the government officials as well as the many people who attended that event. So this 1967 decree gave the title to the Santo Niño de Tacloban as Santo Niño de Leyte. So no longer the title was Santo Niño de Tacloban, but it gained another title, Santo Niño de Leyte. So since then, the preparations for the June 30 fiesta would include the visit of the Santo Niño de Tacloban, now the Santo Niño de Leyte, to all municipalities under the province of Leyte. So from being just Santo Niño de Tacloban, it is now celebrated as the Santo Niño de Leyte. And the feast is June 30th. The devotion of the people actually led the bishop to give this recognition to the Santo Niño de Tacloban as the Santo Niño de Leyte. And actually this is also supported by the many devotees that go to his shrine, the son of the Santo Niño de Tacloban, to ask for His graces and prayers and intercession for whatever need the people have. So with this, I hope we were able to gain somehow a general picture of how this image started and how it acquired the title of Santo Niño de Leyte. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Monsignor Gibert, for that insightful presentation of yours. And now, please allow me to introduce to everyone our next resource person. Now, Mars, as he is fondly called by family and friends, is an assistant professor of the Division of Humanities of UP Visayas Tacloban College and is one of the young faculty members of UP VTC. He completed his master's degree in art history from UP Diliman in July of last year. Given the numerous artistic visual projects that he has engaged in, Professor Briones is definitely a visual artist at heart. To date, he is one of the curators of the Viva XCon exhibition for this year. In this online Santo Niño exhibit, Professor Briones serves as the curator and lead researcher. This distinct role required him to conceptualize and to put together the entire Santo Niño Bendísyuni online project. Thus, we are proud to introduce to everyone a very good friend, Professor Mars Edwinson Joe Briones. Hi, Mars.
Hi, sir.
Hi,
Hello.
Hi, kumusta? Now, as pointed out earlier, Professor Briones has played a crucial role in the realization of this online project. From start to finish, he served as curator and lead researcher in gathering data that are related to the various Santo Niño images in Eastern Visayas. These images do not only include those found in Tacloban City, but also include those that are found in Carigara, Leyte, Limasawa and Malitbog, Southern Leyte, Basay, Samar, as well as Lawaan and Kinapondan, Eastern Samar. Mars, would you like to greet our attendees out there before we start with your presentation?
Yes. Thank you, Sir Stephen, for that wonderful introduction. Thank you, everyone, for attending this forum and the launching of the online exhibition. I'd like to make a special mention of Dr. Patrick D. Flores, my thesis advisor, who is joining us in the room today. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you again, Mars. And we shall now begin with a video presentation entitled Notions of Bendísyuni in the Image of El Capitan, the Santo Niño de Tacloban by Professor Mars Edwinson Joe Briones.
Mopeng Kolop. In this presentation, I will be talking about the image of El Capitan, the Santo Niño de Tacloban, which is a religious sculpture placed at the retablo of the Santo Niño Church in Tacloban. Parts of my discussion are taken from my master's thesis in UP Diliman, which I defended exactly a year ago, expertly guided by my amazing thesis advisor, Dr. Patrick D. Flores. Bendísyuni is not actually a concept that I talked about extensively in my thesis, but I chose to explore this concept here as this is one of the key concepts in the curation of the online exhibition of Santo Niño Images and Narratives, which is being launched in this forum. Before I zero in on the topic, it might help to clarify that there are two main Santo Niño images in the Santo Niño Church in Tacloban City. These are El Capitan and El Teniente. Their distinctions are that El Capitan is the original older Santo Niño image, whose provenance is traced to the 1800s and even the 1700s in some accounts. According to Resel Mojares, the Santo Niño de Cebu has the ceremonial title of Excelentísimo Capitan General de las Fuerzas Españolas en Filipinas, or Most Esteemed Captain General of the Spanish Forces in the Philippines. The name El Capitan of the Santo Niño de Tacloban may therefore be traced to this ceremonial title. El Teniente, on the other hand, is the alternate or substitute image The sculpture was ordered made in 1889 in lieu of El Capitan when it was still lost. In this presentation, I will be focusing on the image of El Capitan and in some cases, its so-called replica or alternate image, El Teniente. The idea of utterance or the act of speaking seems intrinsic to the term bendición. As most of us would recognize, this term is a loan word adopted from the Spanish bendición, which means blessing. The opposite of this would be maldición, which means curse. And maybe in Filipino, this would be more in the sense of bad-mouthing a person. A morphological derivation of bendición is the verb Bendísyuni, meaning to bless. In Spanish, this would be bendecir, which is from the two words ben, meaning good, and decir, which means to say. A word in English that is etymologically close to this is benediction, which refers to the utterance of a blessing or the state of being blessed. Now, the notions about the Santo Niño de Tacloban in this presentation refer to ideas about how the image is viewed and understood as a granting blessing. And I explore the idea of bendición largely by asking from what sort of relations between the Santo Niño and devotees is bendición believed or felt to emanate. I will touch upon the iconography and materiality of the image, as well as some narratives and practices surrounding it. A local term related to bendición is gracia, which is also of Spanish origin. The scholar Jaime Biron Polo, in his book about the Binilayan fishing ritual of Maripipi Island, touches upon the concept of gracia by elaborating on the term buhat, that is, the act of giving, or hatag, which, as he explains, embodies an emotive purport as it is immediately associated with kaluoy, which brings about gracia, or blessing, and suerte, or luck. This conception further underscores the reciprocal relations that underpin devotion, which is really the context of the image of the Santo Niño. The image of El Capitan is a Salvator Mundi, or Salvador del Mundo, or Savior of the World sculpture of the Christ child. The depiction of Jesus as a child dates centuries back in Europe as early as the 4th century AD, but perhaps the representation of the child Jesus as Salvator Mundi and as king began in the 15th and 16th centuries, when such an iconographical convention grew prevalent through the works of, among other northern painters, Jan van Eyck and Albrecht Dürer, respectively. Although the painting which seems to have become the most famous is the one by Italian Renaissance artist Leonardo da Vinci. Indeed, the most prominent Salvator Mundi Christ child sculptures are traced to this period, one of which is the infant Jesus of Mechelen, posed in contrapposto, which is the depiction of the human figure with one leg bearing the body's weight and the other relaxed and bent at the knee. This stance was common in the representation of powerful and lordly personages in Western art, as exhibited by statues like the Doryphorus, Roman emperors, and other monarchs. This pose is also exhibited by El Capitan and many other Santo Niño images. Now, as with the infant Jesus of Mechelen, other sculptures of the Holy Child depicted as Salvator Mundi and coming from the 1500s are the Infant Jesus of Prague and Santo Niño de Cebu, which is reckoned as the image that Magellan presented to Humaoy, the Queen of Cebu, in 1521, and widely deemed as the oldest Christian relic in the Philippines. It is no wonder, therefore, given this compaction of symbolisms, the Son of God, Savior of the world, and King, all in one sculpture, that the multi-layered Santo Niño would be the most embellished, most opulent of Catholic religious sculptures. And such an iconographic intricacy is what would lead Sally Ness, who has written about the Santo Niño de Cebu, what would lead her to discern that the Santo Niño appeared not as a person, but as a fabulously adorned surface. Of all this finery, I'd like to focus on some of El Capitan's accoutrements. On the right hand, a scepter, and on the left, a globus cruciger, both of the same material and silver gold palette. Apparently, the Salvator Mundi iconography and imperial regalia are distinct symbolisms that were melded into the Santo Niño. In both compositions, the globus cruciger is present and borne on the left hand. The Salvator Mundi and the imperial regalia depictions, however, differ in the appearance of the right hand. The former depicts this hand as raised in benediction, with Christ sometimes not dressed in royal garb, while the latter shows it as clutching a scepter or a sword. In El Capitan, as in many Santo Niño images, the scepter is attached to the right hand, which makes the sign of benediction or blessing. And that's what's called Pontiff's Blessing or Hand of Benediction, which interestingly is attributed to Peter, the first pope, who made this gesture because he had a nerve injury that prevented him from opening his hand all the way. I think one indication that the hand of benediction and the depiction of Jesus in imperial regalia are of different iconographical origins is that this configuration of the hand cannot allow it to hold a scepter, which, as you can see, looks so delicately, almost impossibly held by the tips of the fingers. This instance proves instructive in understanding the overlaying of iconographic features that resulted in a complex religious image like the Santo Niño, with the hand configured to signify a pontiff's blessing and the scepter attached to it in this position. The Holy Child, quite in a sleight of hand sort of manner, bestows blessing and at once commands veneration, weaving together two significations that serendipitously hint at the reciprocal relations that describe the nature of devotion. The most dominant narrative associated with the Santo Niño de Tacloban concerns the series of events from 1888 to 1889, when the image was lost on its way from Manila, and when it was retrieved from Semirara and finally returned to Tacloban, where, according to accounts, the Santo Niño image put an end to a cholera epidemic. It is through this narrative that the return of the image is believed to be miraculous. And I'm interested in how the idea of bendition may be thought of in relation to descriptions and depictions of the miraculous. Broadly speaking, bendition is understood as divine favor and protection, which is articulated in prayers, poems, and stories about the Santo Niño through words like tabangi, panalipdi, and salirungan. Narratives about the miraculous return of the image on June 30, 1889 describe the event in grand terms: historic, providential, and dramatic, and the most startling episode in the history of the Philippines, or possibly the whole world. And the welcoming of the image is also reckoned as unparalleled, in that nobody in Tacloban had ever been received with as much kinasing-kasing pagkalipay, according to the Leyte poet Iluminado Lucente. The 1989 yearbook presents quite an elaborate account of this particular event. The moment when El Capitan swiftly healed the people not only of cholera, but also of other infirmities. According to the account, in no time at all, hundreds had thronged to gather at Panalaron to kiss the Holy Child's feet and garments, or even just to get a piece of the wooden crate which had held the Niño. Hundreds of sick, limping, disabled devotees gathered around the sacred image, and it is told that the sick were cured of their ailment, the crippled dropped their crutches and walked, or the blind who had groped or been led to the place were able to see. This instantaneousness with which the Santo Niño is believed to have cured the people is also evoked in the Leyte poet Iluminado Lucente's 1953 account of the providential event, which he relates through a testimony, according to which At that moment, not a single house in Tacloban was left with a person. Men, women, children, the elderly, the well or the sick crowded into the streets from the pier at Panalaron to the church. And hence, on that day, it was as if the cholera epidemic was simply extinguished by the power of the Santo Niño. Sugadlahin pinarong hangahom, han Santo Niño, in the words of Lucente. The 1889 return of the image is annually commemorated, if not reenacted, through the grand fluvial and land processions. This photo here is of the fluvial procession during the centenary celebration of the feast in 1989, 100 years after the 1889 return. In 2017, one of the years I documented the grand procession, the weather ever so suddenly turned violent, exactly as the boat bearing the Santo Niño image was approaching the port. The image used here, as in recent years, is El Teniente, the so-called replica. Now, when the flotilla arrived at the port, devotees from the pump boats jumped into the sea to catch flowers from the pedestal of El Teniente. People were eager to catch the flowers despite the rough sea, and in fact, one of the boats capsized, leaving the passengers waiting to be rescued by the Coast Guard. Now, while the rain would have hampered the land procession, one old woman cheerfully proclaimed, "Hala, blessing ininiya, mapauran laanay ako kay blessing." So much has been said about the Holy Child's affinity with and powers over water, being pleased when showered under the rain or bathed in the sea, resisting or controlling the sulog or ocean currents, and traversing marine spaces, as explained to me in my conversation with the scholar Julius Bautista, who has also written about the Santo Niño de Cebu. A novena from the 1800s describes how prayers for rain are answered by the Cebu Niño if the image is brought to the sea where he could swim. Lines from the novena say, "Dadadon ka sa baybayon og sa dagat pasalumon." And the practice described here is even traced to older stories from the 1500s. In Leyte and Samar, I have come across resonant stories. The practice of bathing the Santo Niño image, for instance, is performed in some towns. El Capitan, in particular, is also explained through the Agipo accounts as coming from a river or sea, while both narratives of the Baliuan and the loss and return emphasize the image's movements across seas from island to island. Indeed, accounts of El Capitan's loss in 1888 remark with much amazement how the crate containing the sculpture remained afloat despite its tremendous weight, along with the heavy candeleros or candle holders. In this impression, the image's paglutaw-lutaw, which is also a term recurrent in the narratives about the image's loss and return, the image's paglutaw-lutaw or buoyancy is viewed as miraculous. I had also heard many people describing the Santo Niño as makitubig or water-loving. And the belief is common, so much so that in my conversation with Leti Peñaranda, the woman who wrote and read the Siday in the Grand Procession in 2017, in our conversation, a church worker who overheard us explained that this was the reason why it would often rain during the Grand Procession, especially at that very moment of the image's arrival at the port. I'd like to end with scenes of El Teniente's arrival at the Santo Niño Church after the land procession from the port in 2018. In this moment, the procession was disassembled and turned into a crowd as devotees surrounded the float, reaching out their arms, gesticulating, and asking for some flowers, which the lay ministers were pulling off from the pedestals and tossing to them. The scene of El Teniente's arrival at the port in 2017, where devotees swam in the sea to catch flowers, was paralleled by the image's return to the Santo Niño Church, all for the bendition that the flowers are believed to bear from having touched the surface of the Santo Niño image.
Well, I think we are encountering a temporary technical glitch. Let us please wait for a while for this particular issue to be resolved.
Hello, Sir
Mars?
Stephen.
Yeah.
Hello, that was the end of my presentation. Sorry, it didn't sound
Oh,
conclusive
okay.
enough.
Okay. It
That's
sounded like an
okay.
interruption.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Yeah, well, anyway, thank you very much, Professor Mars, for the scholarly insights that you have shared with us in this afternoon's webinar. Now, friends, now that we are done with our video presentations, let us now proceed to an open forum regarding the topics that were presented to you earlier on. Now, allow me to reiterate what these topics are. The first is a historical outline of the origin of and devotion to the Santo Niño de Leyte by Monsignor Gilbert Urbina. And of course, the second one, notions of Bendísyuni in the image of El Capitan, the Santo Niño de Tacloban by Professor Mars Edwinson Jo Briones. Now, but before we proceed to our open forum, allow us to thank and acknowledge the individuals who have participated, who are here with us right now in this particular online project. We would like to acknowledge and thank our registrants from Tacloban, from as far as Manila and the city of Calbayog and Baguio, and as far as the United States of America. Special mention goes to Monsignor Ramon Aguilos, who is with us today, and of course some faculty members of UPV Tacloban College, headed by our Dean, Dr. Patricia Arinto, as well as friends from the Pintados Foundation Incorporated, led by Mr. Eugene Tan. We also have a representative from the provincial government of Leyte, and I understand from the National Economic Development Authority, and so on and so forth. Thank you very much for your participation in this online project. At this point, we shall now proceed to our webinar open forum. It is in this part of this afternoon's event where we would like to request our attendees to fill in their respective questions on the chat box so that they may be answered by any of our distinguished resource persons. Now, while waiting for the questions from our attendees, please allow me to present the following questions to our resource persons. Our first question is for Monsignor Gilbert Urbina. Monsignor, good afternoon once again. The question here is, what do you think is the most important lesson that people should always remember regarding their faith, piety, and devotion to the Santo Niño?
Well, the Santo Niño is just a symbol of well, a representation rather of the Lord, no, of God Himself. So God became one of us. And if you become a man, you start as a child. So even as a child, no, the child himself is, well, he's powerful already as a child. But more importantly, no, we have to remember that since he has become like us, he has shown to us, no, through his the scriptures, no, what he did, how he lived his life. He has shown to us how to face, no, life and to live life in this world in order to gain everlasting life in heaven. That's all, no? And probably if the Santo Niño is seen as something clothed in majesty, it just tells us that he is really a God, no? But anyway, our devotion should lead us to hope, no, to be with Him someday in heaven by living the ordinariness of our lives today, no, as we are confronted with the realities of life, no, and also guided by His teachings and His example. That's all.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Monsignor Gilbert, for that particular response of yours. Now, our second question is for Professor Briones. Now, as curator and lead researcher, which among the Santo Niño narratives that you have gathered had the strongest personal impact on you, and why?
Thank you, Sir Stephen. Thinking of all the narratives now and remembering my conversations with the people, it's a bit hard to select just one. But maybe as a curator, I find the Santo Niño de la Masawa's context very interesting. Father Vincent Salang in Maasin spoke to us about this image as part of the Quincentennial celebration or the 500th anniversary of Christianity in the Philippines. Supposedly, this represents the Santo Niño de Cebu because in 1521, before the Santo Niño image reached Cebu and was given to Juana or Humaway, logically it had first been to Limasawa for the first mass. So it was a challenge for Father Vincent and others to present the Santo Niño de Limasawa from how it should look, as you will notice in the online exhibition. It does not look like the Santo Niño de Cebu. So from that to contextualizing it in the history of the Cebu image vis-a-vis the idea of beginnings in the birth of Christianity. So the creative research and play of ideas that are involved here are in a way of a critical message, which I find compelling.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mars, for that particular response of yours. Now, this question at this point in time is for both of our resource persons. Now, the question goes this way. Undoubtedly, the devotion to the Santo Niño is strong and widespread among Filipinos. What do you think are the cultural factors or reasons that brought about this strong faith and devotion? Who would like to start? Monsignor or Mars? Mars, perhaps.
Okay. I think in general there are two reasons why the devotion to the Santo Niño is the one that's most popular in the Philippines of all devotions to religious images. So one of which would be the work of missionaries, and the other would be what I would call the appropriable nature of the Santo Niño image. For the first one, actually, I believe Monsignor Gilbert can talk more about this, but the idea is just that the work of missionaries, particularly of the Augustinians, to whom the devotion to the Santo Niño is associated, has greatly contributed to the dissemination and popularization of the devotion to the Holy Child in the Philippines. In Leyte, while there is the claim that the devotion predates Legazpi's 1565 arrival, the beginning of the devotion is also attributed to the coming of the Augustinians from Cebu in 1768 and their subsequent founding of the Tacloban parish, as Monsignor Gilbert has pointed out. Resil Mujares also talks about the spread of the devotion in the Visayas. For example, he cites that in the 1730s, the Augustinians were highly engaged in perpetuating the devotion to the Holy Child, and that a century later, when the same endeavor was revived, the Santo Niño was, quote unquote, invoked as a protector and guide in the reconquest of Bohol. So you can see the entanglements of missionization and colonization here. Of course, in more recent times, in the 1900s, there was also an effort to propagate the devotion in the Visayas and in the country in general. And for example, during the fourth centennial of Christianity in the Philippines in 1565, 5 years prior, there was an effort to spread the devotion to the Santo Niño by bringing a replica of the image of Cebu Nino to other provinces in the Visayas, which remains to be a practice in certain parts of the archipelago. The second one that I touched upon earlier, the idea of the appropriable nature of the Santo Niño, I think in the accounts I've read about the Santo Niño, not only of Tacloban but of Cebu most especially, there have been it has been observed that there are efforts to localize or indigenize it, as scholars would call the process. For example, there are stories that deny the image's European provenance. An example is the Agipo myth, the story of how the image came from a lump of wood that was retrieved by a fisherman from a body of water, and later on it was transformed into the Santo Niño image. Another account would be that um, uh, of the Santo Niño de Cebu, that the Spaniards once took and kept the image so as to change its appearance and make it look European, altering its flat nose and curly hair, and replacing the pearl-bearing shell, according to the story, which it originally had, replacing it with the globus cruciger, which the Nino is seen as holding now. So these instances of localization and indigenization, quote unquote, they point to a certain effort to make the Santo Nino relatable. So that's why it's appropriable. And in general, the appropriable nature of the Santo Nino could be observed also in cases where uh, in how the image is dressed in different ways. Not only in the imperial regalia, taking on the character of king, but also in uniforms of security guards, doctors, and other professions. And this appropriability of the image is perhaps enabled by the idea that the Santo Nino, after all, is a child, someone you dress up, and someone who's approachable. As Salines has written, the Santo Nino was like a blank slate. Uh, quote unquote, it was a most malleable and unfettered subject.
Mhm. Thank you, Mars, for sharing with us notions of localization and appropriateness and things like that. We would like to request Monsignor Gilbert over here to respond to the same question that we posed earlier on. And the question was, Monsignor, what do you think are the cultural factors or reasons that brought about this strong faith and devotion to the Santo Niño?
I think Mars said it all. No, the two things: the appropriability and the missionary endeavor. Really, somebody, the Oceans, and even the church propagated the devotion. I think those two factors actually are key to the spread of the devotion itself. No? To the Santo until
That we
now.
have right now.
Mars said it well, perfectly.
Mhm.
Thank
Thank
you,
you,
Mars.
Monsignor.
Wonderful explanation.
Yes. Thank you, Monsignor. At this point, we would like to inform our resource persons about some questions from on our chat box. And this question comes from Dr. Marieta Sumagaysay, the former Dean of UPV Tacloban College. And her question goes this way. In this time of the pandemic, can you share with us your observations about people's faith, the Liteños in particular?
Well, actually, people's faith has that the faith of the people has not waned. Actually, no. In fact, now it's really it's kind of with the fiestas now. The fiestas now actually are more focused on the religious event, the mass itself, and this has the pandemic has taught us that fiestas actually should be centered on the religious event, not on the other festivities. Because with the pandemic, we had to forgo with other festivities, no? But yet people concentrated on the religious event. And probably this pandemic has put focus on what the fiesta is all about. No? And that goes through with all fiestas, even in the barangays, in the towns, and even in Tacloban itself for this coming fiesta on the 30th of June.
Well, indeed, Monsignor, the current pandemic that we have right now is indeed disruptive. But despite this particular challenge that we are faced with right now, we continue to move on with our devotion and piety to the Santo Niño. Professor Mars, would you like to respond to the question posed by Dr. Subagaysay? And the question is, in this time of the pandemic, can you share with us your observations about people's faith here in Leyte or among Leyteños?
I think that the presence of the parish on social media helps to promote faith, or as Ma'am Mayat mentioned, the renewing or strengthening of faith. For example, the Santo Niño de Tacloban parish has a Facebook page, and that does it's useful because it's in lieu of the face-to-face masses that would have normally been conducted. Actually, there still are, but like in a way, the parish is able to reach more people online, and so that's one observation that I can observe in the context of the pandemic. And there might also be an effort to look at the parallels between the history of Capitan when it was lost and eventually returned in 1889, and when it, according to narratives, healed people during a cholera epidemic, put an end to it instantaneously. So a parallel between that and the ongoing pandemic that's happening now. So a lot of people have been reflecting about this parallel, and so these are just some ways through which they could recall the history and find aspects to it that still resonate to our contemporary condition.
Mhm, mhm. Thank you, Morris. Well, we would like to encourage our attendees to please ask questions from our resource persons. And I'm now looking at the chat box and looking for other questions from our participants and from our attendees. Do we have other questions from our participants in this open forum? Well, if none, shall we now close our open forum
Sir,
for the
maybe
yes Dina Rinto.
maybe not questions. If you like to say anything to add to the discussion,
Yes.
I think Monsignor Aguilos is with us.
Yes.
Monsignor, would you like to say a few words?
Some insights, perhaps?
Also, Mami Acevedo is here. Actually, Ma'am Mayet, if you want to say something, anyone in the room?
Am I heard? Am I heard?
Yes, sir. Hi.
Yes.
Monsignor.
Yes,
Thank
Monsignor
you very
Aguilas is
much.
heard.
Thank you very much for this. Actually don't see myself in that. Maybe I have to check my view, my gallery view. Okay.
There you
Okay,
go.
thank you
We
very
see you
much
now,
for
Monsignor.
Okay. Thank you very much for the invitation, and also for Dean Arinto, Dean Patrice, Pat. I see my cousin here, Avelina Acevedo. Thank you very much for walking in, and of course you are a main, siguro one of the main actors of this whole idea, whole project. I'm so interested about how your grandfather Ilomen de Lucente puts 1739 as the earliest year or time when Santo Niño devotion became maybe or started or spread out from, because 1739 is still the time of the Jesuits. I do not know what was the context of why 1739 as heralded as the year, or maybe that time the Santo Niño devotion became popular in our area. So I'm not talking. I'm not. This question is not addressed to the other two speakers, but I hope Mrs. Acevedo could give us some insights about that. I'm just taking my chances.
I wonder if Mami Acevedo is able to access, and I think somebody has to assist her in this regard.
But anyway, I got that idea
technical
actually,
part.
Mr. Moderator, Dr. Steve. Dr.
Yes,
Steven,
Monsignor.
I actually got that idea over that datum from our speaker himself, Mr. Mars, because he told me about he having interviewed Evelina or Mrs. Acevedo about that particular datum or that particular typescript or manuscript that Mrs. Acevedo has in her hands. And so I'm certainly interested what was the context of that year, 1739, because according to the paper or presentation of Monsignor Gilbert, 1770, and I don't, maybe that's the year that it was introduced by the Augustinians. So I'm so particularly interested about the 1739 dating.
Yes, indeed, Mrs. Acevedo was one of the interviewees for this particular project. Mars, would you like to respond to that particular question, please?
Yes, hello, Monsignor Ramon.
Yes.
I am equally curious about Lucente's mention of the year 1739. Actually, I've read the actual manuscript, which Mrs. Montilla Acevedo generously allowed me to photograph. There was not so much explanation, actually. It was just a mention of the year 1739, but it does not also specifically point to that year as the year when El Capitan, the Santo Niño de Tacloban image, was acquired, but rather that there was already devotion to the Santo Niño in this year. As Monsignor Gilbert Urbina, historical documents tell us that the Augustinians founded the Tacloban parish in 1770 when they replaced the Jesuits. So these claims, they point to when devotions to the Santo Niño happened, but not exactly to the provenance of the sculpture of the Santo Niño image. But I would speculate that it was possible that there was already a devotion to the Santo Niño in 1739, even though it was still the time of the Jesuits, because I think it was from an account by Pedro Quirino, a Jesuit historian and priest. He mentioned that, or was it from another account? I'm trying, because there's too many historiographical accounts that I've read, but like one account says that the Augustinians were already in Leyte as early as 1580. So the late 1500s, and if you recall the timeline, the Santo Niño de Cebu was brought here in 1521. So it was a very early time of Spanish colonization of the archipelago. So if we associate the Santo Niño devotion to the Augustinians, and if we believe the account saying that they were here as early as the late 1500s, that it was possible that the devotion was already introduced in this part of the country, although not saying that the image was already there in this time. And even when the Jesuits were the ones who were, even when the Eastern Visayan provinces were under the jurisdiction of the Jesuits, at the time, there was still connection between these ecclesiastical groups and Cebu, which was led by the Augustinians. And it was said that missionaries and the clergy would report to Cebu as some sort of a center to, I don't know, there would be gatherings. And so it was possible that through these links, the devotion to the Santo Niño was already introduced to Leyte and Samar before 1770. But as to the origin of the image, there really is no account pointing to a specific time.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Well, indeed, Professor Mars, we are learning a lot of cultural, historical, and religious insights about our devotion and piety to the Santo Niño. Now, do we have any other rejoinders, any other questions regarding our devotion to the Santo Niño, particularly from our attendees, from our participants? Well, if none, we would like to close this afternoon's open forum for the Santo Niño Bendísyuni webinar. We would like to thank our attendees for their interesting insights and questions. And most especially, we would like to thank our resource persons for the insights that they have readily shared with us in this online project. And now, let us please proceed to the launching and opening of the Santo Niño Bendísyuni online project. We shall begin with a message from Mr. Eugene Tan, the president of the Pintados Foundation Incorporated. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Eugene Tan.
Thank you, Sir Stephen. I guess we have learned so much this afternoon from our two resource speakers. I'd like to greet Father Gilberto Urbina and Monsignor Aguilos. A pleasant good afternoon. And of course, to the officials, faculty, students, and staff of the UP Visayas Tacloban College, headed by Dean Patricia Arinto, our webinar attendees who come from various points of the region and the country, our distinguished guests, a pleasant good afternoon to all of us. Since the establishment of the Pintados Foundation, it has always been guided by the following mission statements: to preserve and promote the cultural heritage of Eastern Visayas, to sustain the Pintados Festival celebration in honor of the senior Santo Niño de Leyte, to consistently provide social services to the less privileged of the society, and to contribute to the economic development of Eastern Visayas. These mission statements have always been the guiding light in all the accomplishments that the foundation has, along with its multi-generational roster member volunteers it has achieved. Now that we are all in the midst of pandemic, certain adjustments has to be made in the pursuit of these mission statements without losing touch with the main intent of these mission statements. New ways of doing things have to be formulated to efficiently and effectively respond to the challenges that this pandemic has brought about. Innovative and creative approaches and strategies have to be realized to maintain and sustain the avowed mission statements. It is for this reason that we readily agreed and cooperated with the proposal of the UP Visayas Tacloban College to spearhead this online Santo Niño exhibit, for the reason that such a project is definitely in line with the Foundation's mission statement. Aside from the fact that the Pintados Foundation has consistently held its face-to-face Santo Niño exhibit in the past, holding an online exhibit during a pandemic is an appropriate response to the public health crisis that we are now faced with. Most importantly, holding this kind of an exhibit adds depth and rigor to the exhibit that we traditionally have. In view of the academic and scholarly expertise that the UP Visayas Tacloban College can provide, holding an online exhibit such as this expands the audience reach of a project of this sort, which, as we all know, goes beyond the immediate confines of Tacloban City and its nearby municipalities. Inasmuch as we are now in the midst of a year-long Quincentennial celebration, the project definitely contributes to a better understanding of an impact of Christianity to our country. Thus, for and in behalf of the Pintados Foundation Incorporated, I would like to personally thank UP Visayas Tacloban College, headed by its Dean, Patricia Arinto, for realizing this important cultural, historical, and religious undertaking. Thank you for this opportunity and for partnering with Pintados Foundation. And of course, I would like also to thank Dr. Stephen Lagarde and Sir Mars and the rest of the team for making this project into a reality. And for the success, likewise, of this project. So in the behalf of the Pintados Foundation, we would like to thank each and every one of those who has exerted so much effort for making this project into a realization. Damo nga salamat ha aton nga tanan nga nigpadayon naton pagsaurog han aton minahal nga patrono aniya kapistahan kundiin ang Senior Santo Niño ang rason ng atong pagsalinurog gini nga aton yan nakapatronan. So damo nga salamat, maupay nga patron aton nga tanan. Thank you very much and good afternoon.
Damo nga salamat. Thank you very much, Mr. Eugene Tan, the president of the Pintados Foundation Incorporated, for the collaborative endeavor that you and the Pintados Foundation has engaged in with the UP Tacloban Leyte Samar Heritage Center and Bátì UP Tacloban. We look forward to more collaborative partnerships with the Pintados Foundation Incorporated. And now, let us please listen to a message from our Dean, Dr. Patricia B. Arinto, for this afternoon's launching and opening of the Santo Niño Bendísyuni online exhibit.
Good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yes.
That seems to be the greeting now, so I will always begin my remarks with that question. Maupay nga kulo pa aton nga tanan, colleagues and friends. Before anything else, I would like to thank our speakers at this afternoon's forum, Monsignor Gilbert Urbina and Assistant Professor Mars Edwinson Briones, as well as our moderator, Dr. Stephen Lagarde, for a very insightful, albeit brief, conversation. I think that their presentations and the discussion that followed has deepened our understanding of the devotion to the Santo Niño, and it has given us new insights into our people's relationship with this icon of Philippine Catholicism. As you know, and as has been mentioned, the Santo Niño occupies a special place in the hearts of Filipino Catholics. The feast days of the Santo Niño are major celebrations, especially in the Visayas. The Sinulog in Cebu, the Ati-Atihan in Aklan, the Dinagyang in Iloilo, and the feast day of the Santo Niño de Leyte, which is celebrated with the Sangyao Festival and the Pintados Festival. Of course, the feast day of the Santo Niño is celebrated by Filipinos throughout the archipelago and beyond. No? Our affection for and veneration of the Santo Niño is informed not only by our Catholicism, by our Catholic faith, I think, but also by the special place of children in Filipino culture. I once had a Korean student who remarked that Filipinos are so affectionate towards children, unlike Koreans, she said. I remember that when she said that to me, more than around 25 years ago, I think, I was a little bit surprised. I hadn't thought that as a culture, we have a special fondness for children. I mean, we sort of take that for granted, right? And I thought, what culture isn't fond of children? So but apparently there are cultures where children are not as valued as as loved as they are here, for example. So, come to think of it, her observation does have some truth to it. And I was reminded of that conversation again. The reason I'm sharing this with you is I was reminded of that conversation with my Korean student when I read the opening statement of the curatorial note for the Santo Niño Bendísyuni online exhibition that we are opening this afternoon. The statement goes, "The charm of a child is unmatched. And this is especially so in the case of the child Jesus. Small and winsome, the Santo Niño wields a magnetic power, a force that perhaps moved Juana, the Queen of Cebu, to ask Magellan for the image of the Holy Child in 1521. And the same force that has continued to draw the attention of millions of people 5 centuries since. So as mentioned already, this online exhibition is actually part of UP Tacloban's celebration or contribution to the celebration of the Quincentennial, no, that is being celebrated nationwide. I do think, that we will, to go back to the idea of being charmed by the child Jesus, I do think that we will be charmed by the 17 images of the Santo Niño that are featured in our online exhibition. Truth be told, until I looked at these images while we were preparing for the exhibition launch, I was not myself personally drawn to the Santo Niño. Perhaps because I had never looked at it up close. It is always up there, right? Very far, on the altar. And even if you stand right there at the foot of the altar, it will still seem very far, and one cannot really appreciate, for example, the expression on the face, and all of that, no? But looking at each of the 17 images, there are 17, if I'm not mistaken, looking at each image closely, and examining the details, the facial expression, the hair, the elaborate embroidery in some instances, one cannot help but be charmed. Of course, there are also the oral narratives by the custodians of the images to draw us in further. The narrators tell us about not only how their family or their parish, in the case of the parish priests, came to have the Santo Niño image, but also moments when they felt particularly blessed by the image. So I hope you will, when you go through the exhibition, I hope you will take the time to click on the audio button, okay? And you will hear these narratives as you are looking at the various images. I dare say that we too will be blessed by each image of the Santo Niño as we go through the exhibition, which we are launching this afternoon. I would like to thank the Pintados Foundation, led by Mr. Eugene Tan and its board of trustees, for co-organizing this exhibition with us, especially in particular with the Leyte Samar Heritage Center, led by Dr. Stephen Lagarde. Okay. This is a very important part of the mandate of the Leyte Samar Heritage Center, which is to promote our cultural heritage as people of Leyte and Samar. And I would also like to thank the Archdiocese of Palo, represented here by Monsignor Gilbert Urbina and Monsignor Ramon Aguilos, for their support. We cannot have an exhibition of the Santo Niño, without the church with us. It will be a very strange exhibition indeed. And I would like to thank the parishes and the families whose Santo Niño images are featured in the exhibition, for participating, for the generosity with which they shared their time and their beloved Santo Niño with us, and to be able to share it with everyone who will view the exhibition. And finally, I would like to thank the organizing committee, headed by curator, Assistant Professor Mars Briones, who is also the faculty in charge of our Office of Continuing Education, which has the special program Bátì UP Tacloban. Okay, Mars, not only curated, he actually led the expedition to take photographs of some of the Santo Niños. Originally, we thought we would feature only the Santo Niños in Tacloban City, but we felt that would not be enough. So really, he and the team and Dr. Lagarde, they went as far as Limasawa. So that is the starting point of our procession, because that is the theme. The procession is the theme of the exhibition, no? The motif, I mean. So Mars is the curator. The photographer is Mr. Derek Crisostomo. Thank you very much for the very sharp photographs. Our graphic designer, very, I dare, if I may say so myself, very beautiful graphic design for the exhibit. Our graphic designer is Mr. A.K. Renomeron. Our web designers who slaved over the website. It's so difficult to do an online exhibition, you know. There are so many details you have to pay attention to when it comes to the rendering on the web. Assistant Professor John D. Ultra, who is also UP Tacloban Systems Administrator, and Ms. Marvi Villones, of our University Extension Associate, and the staff of the Leyte Samar Heritage Center who promoted the event, Mr. John de la Cruz and Mr. John Lawrence Lorente. And of course, our consultant was Monsignor Gilbert Urbina. And as I said, we owe a lot to all of our owners and custodians. When you go through the exhibit, please don't forget to take a look at the credits page. They are all named there, and the places where they come from. So, ladies and gentlemen, friends, colleagues, I hope that you will enjoy the exhibition. It is something to go over again and again, I think, and I hope you will invite your family, your friends, no, and acquaintances. At this time, you know, there was a question earlier about the pandemic and you know, blessings and all of that, and being, I think this is a blessing, and we must take advantage of it. We do need it at this time. Maupay nga patron na aton nga tanan. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dean Arinto, for your equally insightful message. And of course, thank you very much to Mr. Eugene Tan for believing in the relevance, importance, and timeliness of this online project. Indeed, this project will never be realized without the distinct contribution of a lot of individuals who have readily shared their time and expertise in making this particular project a success. And now, allow us to present to everyone the Santo Niño Bendísyuni teaser. Okay, that was the short teaser for our online exhibit. Okay, so friends, we are now about to end this afternoon's opening and closing program. But before we do that, we would like to remind our attendees to please fill out the post-activity evaluation form before leaving the webinar. The link to the said evaluation form is posted on the chat box. A link to the Santo Niño online exhibit is also posted on the same chat box. Now, we would like to remind our attendees that your certificate of attendance will be sent to you after 7 working days once you have answered the post-evaluation form. Of course, we are definitely inviting everyone to view the Santo Niño Bendísyuni online exhibit via the Facebook pages of UPV Tacloban College, the Leyte Samar Heritage Center webpage, and Bátì UP Tacloban. And now, we would like to request everyone to please open their video camera for the photo op of this afternoon's event. Okay, so perhaps I'd like to surmise that we're done with the photo op.
Who is taking the photo? Tapos
I
na?
think Marvy, I think so.
I'll be taking the photo.
Marvy is in
Okay.
charge.
AK is taking the
Are we done?
photo.
Oh, okay.
Can everyone hold a smile for 5 seconds?
Okay. Smile for 5
Timer
seconds.
starts now. Okay na.
Okay.
Thank you,
Okay,
Kaya
everyone.
are we
halaba man
done?
na 5 seconds. People, just click on the link. It's in the chat box. If you click on the link, you can begin to enjoy the exhibit. You can view it on your phone or you can view it on your laptops.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay. Damo nga salamat. Maupay nga patron.
Damo
Baga
nga
maminaw ini
salamat.
nga patron. Pero,
Malitaw din.
pero, meaningful, I think.
Okay.
Salamat.
So, friends,
Salamat.
friends, we shall now close this afternoon's event with the singing of the UP Naming Mahal.
UP